Okay, I'm Wajahat Ahmed. I'm a visiting faculty at OB Jindal Global University. Today we are going to discuss the module Understanding the Elderly and what are the learning outcomes of the module to develop an understanding about elderly persons and old age from a legal perspective, to provide an understanding of the statistical profile of the elderly both in India as well as at the international level, is entitled to various rights which are fundamental to human existence. These rights do not change as one grows older. In other words, older people, as with every other section of the population, have human rights as they are inherent to all human beings. Nevertheless, there has not been much dialogue and articulation of the rights of the older population, either nationally or internationally. Not very long ago, the issue of aging was considered a matter of importance for only a handful of countries. However, in recent years, there has been significant advocacy efforts calling to enhance international thinking and action on the human rights of older persons. With the increase in number of aged persons in the recent years has shed light on the lack of adequate protection mechanisms and on the existing gaps in policies and programs to address the situation of older persons. Various stakeholders have called for more visibility and increased use of international human rights standards to address the dire situation of millions of older people around the world. So, who is an old, elderly person? Old age is usually associated with declining faculties, both mental and physical, and a reduction in social commitments, including sport participation of any person. The precise onset of old age varies culturally and historically. With the increasing deliberations over the issue of the rights of the elderly, there arose a need to define old age so as to enable the portion of the populace to avail the benefits of that are available to them. However, till date, no commonly agreed definition of old age exists. Older persons do not represent a homogeneous group. The Committee of the Ministers of the Council of Europe, in its recommendation number R94/9 concerning elderly people, has asserted that aging is a process. Being old depends on the individual circumstances and the wider environment, and it is useless to attempt to define exactly when old age begins. The definition of old age can be attempted based on three aspects. Number one, chronological age. A person is said to have attained old age based on chronology of the number of years of age he has completed. The old age based on chronology is usually defined by the state. Number two, change in social role. The roles of a person in the society changes over a period of time. Accordingly, whether a person has attained the age or not can be determined based on the social roles. For example, change in work patterns, adult status of children, menopause, etc. Number 3, change in capabilities. The change in the capabilities of individuals also assists in determining the developmental stage of individuals. For instance, senility. Change in physical characteristics like frailty and so are some of the factors in defining old age. However, it is widely accepted that using a chronological age to define older people has a practical advantage, as it gives clarity to whom a specific policy or law targets. On the other hand, it also entails the disadvantage that setting an age threshold may differ from country to country and from one context to another. Moreover, biological age does not always coincide with chronological age of a person. Further, the age structure of the population also plays a role as to how old age is perceived. Legal definition of old age/elderly person. Although there are commonly used definitions of old age, there is no general agreement on the age at which a person becomes old. Lacking a standard definition acceptable to all circumstances, the age at which a person becomes eligible for statutory and occupational retirement, person has become the default definition in many instances. The ages of 60 and 65 years are often used despite its arbitrary nature, for which the origins and surrounding debates can be followed from the end of the 1800s through the mid-1900s in the background of the arbitrariness surrounding the definition of old age. Several attempts have been made in understanding rather than rigidly defining old age, mainly for the purposes of human rights. United Nations. How does United Nations define it? United Nations, owing to the varied definitions of old age between countries and over time, the United Nations has agreed that 60 plus years may be usually denoted as old age, though no standard criterion has been formally adopted. And this was the first attempt to define old age at the international level. So, general comment number 6 of the Committee of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The general comment defines older people as those persons aged 60 years and above. So, how does the World Health Organization define an old person? For the study of old age in Africa under the MDS project, WHO identified 50 years as the beginning of old age. At the same time, it recognized that the developing world often defines old age not by years but by the roles, loss of previous roles, or inability to make active contribution to society. The Regional Office for Europe of the World Health Organization, the European Regional Office, in its report on preventing older maltreatment 2011, has defined older maltreatment as regards to people aged 60 years and older. We have the Council of Europe recommendations on the promotion of human rights of older people. With the changing perceptions of old age in the modern society, the Council of Europe followed an illustrative approach. in defining old age in its recommendations on the promotion of human rights of older persons. The present recommendation applies to persons whose older age constitutes alone or in interaction with other factors, including perceptions and attitudes, a barrier to the full enjoyment of their human rights and fundamental freedoms, and their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis. The recommendation further takes note that the member states of the Council of Europe have decided chronological ages at national level whereby persons enjoy specific rights and advantages by reason of their old age. Thus, there exists varied perceptions as to who are considered as old/elderly persons, and no standard definition exists at the international level. The definitions vary based on the social construct and the wider environment of the concerned region, along with the corresponding demography of the population. Adopting a dynamic concept of age that reflects the specific needs of older people and the diminishing life chances they are facing is the need of the hour. What is the definition of old age/elderly person in India? We identify old people as senior citizens. The National Human Rights Commission of India perceives old age as a social construct rather than a biological stage. However, for the purposes of entitlement to various benefits provided by the government to the elderly people, a legal definition of old/elderly persons has been provided under the terminology of senior citizens. National Policy for Older Persons, 1990. The National Policy for Older Persons, formulated in the year 1990 by the Government of India, identified that any person who has attained the age of 60 years or above as an old/elderly person. Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act 2007. According to Section 2H of the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act 2007, senior citizen means any person being a citizen of India who has attained the age of 60 years or above. Hence, in the Indian context, any person who has attained the age of 60 years or above is a senior citizen, that is, an old/elderly person. Number 4, population aging. How do we define population aging? Population aging is a process by which the proportion of older persons in the total population increases. The population of the older persons in the total populace is proportionately higher in this phenomenon. The 20th century witnessed significant demographic transitions owing to the increased progress in research, science, and technology. The advances in healthcare and rapid economic development have resulted in reduced fertility and increase life expectancy. Consequently, the world population has been experiencing significant aging. The change in demographic trend is ongoing, and the world population is experiencing significant aging. Since the mid-20th century, population aging was advanced at the time of the International Conference on Population and Development in 1994 in Cairo, Egypt, and the Second World Assembly on Aging, which took place in Madrid, Spain in 2002. According to the World Aging Report 2013, aging had started earlier in the more developed regions and was beginning to take place in some developing countries and was becoming more evident at the global scale during the 1994 conference. However, intensity and depth of aging will vary considerably among countries and regions, though the phenomenon is common throughout world population. The United Nations Population Division produces global population projections revised early 2 years. The population statistics and projections of UN provide a source for demographic trends in a global perspective. The latest population projections were released in 2012. World Population Prospects. The 2012 revision, the 23rd round of the official United Nations population estimates and projections prepared biennially by the Population Division of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the Secretariat, based on the revised population projections of 2012, the United Nations released a World Aging Report in the year 2013, updating all the previous editions. The demographic trends presented below are based on these reports. Some of the major findings of the World Aging Report 2013 are as follows. The global share of older people, meaning aged 60 years or over, increased from 9.2% in 1990 to 11.7% in 2013 and will continue to grow as a proportion of the world population, reaching 21.1% by 2050. Globally, the number of older persons, meaning aged 60 years or over, is expected to more than double from 841 million people in 2013 to more than 2 billion in 2050. The United Nations has estimated the elderly population to be 12.3% of the total world population as on July 2015. Older persons are projected to exceed the number of children for the first time in 2047. The process of population aging has resulted in the shifting of the median age. Globally, the median age moved from 24 years in 1950 to 29 years in 2010 and will continue to increase to 36 years in 2050. Not only is the population aging, the older population is itself aging. Globally, the share of older persons aged 80 years or over was 14% of the older population, meaning 16 years and above, in 2013, and is projected to reach 19% in 2050. If this projection is realized, there will be around 392 million persons aged 60 years are over by 2050, more than 3 times the present. Most developed countries already have aged population. Nevertheless, the older population is growing faster in less developed countries of the world compared to the more developed countries, and by 2050, nearly 8 in 10 of the world's older population will live in the less developed regions. There is a significant difference in the sex ratio of the older population, with the predominance of women within the age population. Globally, there were 85 men per 100 women in the age group of 60 years and above, and 61 men per 100 women in the age group of 80 years and above. The sex ratios are expected to increase moderately during the next several decades. Globally, 40% of the older persons aged 60 years or over live independently, that's to say alone or with their spouse only. Independent living is far more common in the developed countries, where about 3/4 of older persons live independently, compared with only 1/4 in developed countries, and 1/8 in the least developed countries. Many older persons still need to work, especially in developing countries. So, in 2010, the labor force participation of persons aged 65 years or over was around 31% in the less developed regions and 8% in the more developed regions, while the participation of older men in the labor force is decreasing in the less developed countries. It is increasing in the more developed regions. However, men predominate the labor force of the older population. Older persons are the world's fastest growing age group in 2014. The annual growth rate for the population aged 60 years or older will be almost triple the growth rate for the population as a whole. In absolute terms, the number of people aged 60 years or older has almost doubled between 1994 and 2014. And people in this age group now outnumber children under the age of 5. The projections of the older population of the world in 2013 can be summarized as follows. Older population, meaning 60 years and above, 12% of total population. Very old, meaning 80 years or above, 14% of the older population. 1.68% of the total population. Sex ratio, 60 years and above, 65 and above, 80 and above, 85 men per 100 women. 80 men per 100 women, 62 men per 100 women. Independent living, 40% of older population. Dependency ratio is 52. Old age support ratio is 8. Region-wise percentage of older population, meaning 50 years and above. So, now we start with the Indian population. Like all around the world, the population in India is also undergoing the process of aging. According to the facts of the population census conducted in 2011 under the authority of the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, the population of older persons 60 years and above has increased from 7.7% in 2001 to 8% of the total Indian population in 2011. Recently, the United Nations has estimated that 8.9% of total Indian population comprises of the elderly as on July 2015. A brief account of the facts of the 2011 population census as released by the Government of India is as follows. 8% of the total Indian population comprises of older persons. The population of older women is more compared to older men, with a sex ratio of 97 men per 100 women, while older women constitute around 8.98% of the total Indian population. Older men account for 8.19% of the total population. Further, within the older population, women constitute 51%, while men amount to 49%. Like the world, even in India, the older population itself is undergoing the process of aging. 10.87% of the total older population, meaning 60 years and above, of India comprises of the very old, meaning 80 people who are 80 years and above. What's the percentage of older population in India? Total male, female, older population 60 years and above, 8578.19, 8.98, very old population 80 years and above, 0.93085, 1.02. Now let us summarize. Any person who has attained the age of 60 years or above is said to be an older or elderly person or a senior citizen in the Indian context, both universally as well as domestically. With the advancement in science and technology, progress in medical and healthcare, a decline is seen in the fertility and mortality rates, which in turn have led to the increase in the population of the older persons. Consequently, the population is aging, both at the domestic as well as global levels. Further, the older population is itself aging, with the growing numbers of the very old, meaning people who are 80 years and above. The phenomenon of population aging brings with it a number of challenges. Hence, there is a need to recognize and accord legal protection to the rights of the elderly to enable them to enjoy their human rights on an equal basis with others. Thank you.